Buckle up, folks, because what just happened between President Donald J. Trump and Ilhan Omar isn't just another political headline. This is the kind of moment that flips the entire game board, okay? And most people have no idea what it really means yet. Now, for years, Omar has walked around Washington untouchable, blasting America, mocking conservatives, and saying things that would have ended anyone else's career in a heartbeat. But then came Charlie Kirk's tragic death. And instead of showing even an ounce of basic decency, Ilhan Omar decided to double down with some of the cruelest comments that we've even heard from a sitting member of Congress. Now, this is when President Trump saw his opening. And let me tell you guys, his response didn't just clap back. It changed the stakes forever, because the moment that Trump hit Truth Social, it shifted everything. Allegations that were buried for years suddenly came flooding into the mainstream. Ilhan Omar thought that she could just kind of brush it off. But for the first time in her entire career, you can actually see the fear in her eyes. Now, today I want to go ahead and break it all down. President Trump's counterpunch, Omar's panic, the shocking legal realities that nobody's talking about right now, and why this one moment could end her career for good, possibly even get her deported. Stay tuned, guys, because what I'm about to show you will make it crystal clear why President Trump just turned the tables and why Ilhan Omar is completely rattled like never before. Hit the like button, subscribe. Let's go ahead and start right here, because the moment that lit this entire firestorm wasn't Trump. It was Ilhan Omar herself. Charlie Kirk had just tragically passed away. We all saw it. A young leader, a husband, a father. America expected silence at worst, respect at best. But Omar, nah. She decided to repost a meme comparing Kirk to Frankenstein, as if he was some kind of a mad scientist who created his own monster and got destroyed by it. Think about that for a second. Okay, this is a sitting member of Congress mocking a man's death. Not privately, but publicly, proudly, doubling down for all the world to see. And she didn't stop there. She followed up by declaring Charlie Kirk's legacy belonged in the dustbin of history. Let that sink in, guys. At a time when his wife is grieving, his children are mourning, asking, "Where's Daddy? When's Daddy coming home?" His movement was gathered to honor his memory. Omar chose cruelty, and the actions across America was swift, because there are lines you just don't cross. I'm sorry, this is one of them. Death used to be one of them. Even bitter political enemies once respected the dead. But Ilhan Omar shattered that. And once she did, the outrage exploded like wildfire. Now, social media was flooded with one message: deport Omar. It wasn't just conservatives. It was independents. It was Democrats whispering discomfort every day. Americans, everyday Americans who don't even follow politics. They're saying, what happened to basic decency? Drop a deport Omar if you think Ilhan Omar should get the heck out of America. Now, this is why this hit different. It wasn't just Republicans mad at Democrats. It wasn't just another partisan shouting match. It was Americans across party lines saying, no, you don't celebrate death. You don't kick a man's legacy while his family is in mourning. And from that moment on, Omar wasn't just controversial. Oh, she was radioactive. And then came Trump. Donald J. Trump, now President of the United States again in 2025, saw what Ilhan Omar had done and knew instantly this wasn't just a gaffe. This was a window. And Trump, more than anyone, knows how to kick that window wide open, doesn't he? On Truth Social, he didn't just clap back with insults. No, he reframed the entire fight. He looked at Omar, a sitting congresswoman mocking the dead, and he pointed straight to Somalia, her own country of origin. He listed it out for the world to see. Poverty, corruption, privacy, terrorism, decades of civil war. 70% of the population living in extreme poverty. Somalia ranked among the most corrupt nations on earth. And then Trump delivered the knockout question. How can someone from a failed state lecture Americans about how to run America? That's vintage Trump. Flip the script. Take the moral high ground away from your opponent. All of a sudden, it wasn't Trump defending conservatives. It was Omar trying to explain why she of all people had the authority to attempt to scold this nation. And then President Trump? He wasn't done. Oh no, of course not. He had a further cooker. So, He dropped a bomb that was it's been floating in the shadows for years. The marriage allegations. Comment down below. Drop a yes if you've heard of Ilhan Omar's marriage allegations. He posted, "Wasn't she the one that married her brother in order to gain citizenship?" Boom. Guys, with that one line, Trump dragged a rumor that had been bouncing around the internet for years and blasted it right into the mainstream. In fact, the so-called airlock broke. In fact, the story that the media outlets had buried, dismissed as conspiracy, all of a sudden couldn't be ignored anymore. Not when the President of the United States was spelling it out for millions of Americans. Okay, now here's the kicker. Ilhan Omar had no real answer because this wasn't Trump making it up out of thin air. These documents, the marriage license applications, they've existed. Okay? Investigations have been whispered about for years. Everyone in DC knew the chatter was out there, but no one dared to touch it. Not until Trump forced the issue. And so now, Omar wasn't on offense anymore. Now she's scrambling, she's on defense, rattled, and for the first time looking genuinely afraid. So, how did Omar respond? By running to CNN, and it was a complete disaster. Sitting across from Caitlin Collins, Omar looked nothing like the confident, progressive firebrand that her base is used to seeing. She was jittery, defensive, almost panicked. When Caitlin Collins pressed her about the Frankenstein post, Omar tried to deflect. I don't have to agree with every word in something I share. Wow. But here's the problem, guys. That Frankenstein line wasn't buried in the fine print. It was the headline. It was the punchline. It was the whole point of the post. And Omar had deliberately shared it. No amount of squirming is going to erase that. Then came the deportation question. Collins asked the obvious. What about all these calls for deportation? Omar snapped back with nervous energy. You cannot deport an American citizen. She tried to sound confident, but it came across like she was trying to convince herself more than the audience. And when pushed harder, she lashed out, calling her critics idiots. There you go. You resort to name-calling when you can't defend yourself any further. That's really what happens. That's when people realize something. Okay, Omar wasn't untouchable anymore. She was rattled. But here's a kicker that most Americans had no idea about. Omar wasn't entirely right because while it's rare, it is possible for a naturalized citizen to lose their citizenship. Ladies and gentlemen, it is called denaturalization. Now, if you lied on your application, you already committed marriage fraud, okay? Now, if you lied on your application, if you committed marriage fraud, or if you concealed key facts, you can be stripped of your citizenship. If you commit treason, terrorism, or certain high crimes, you can lose it too. And once that happens, deportation is on the table. Now, you comment down below, guys. If you're paying attention to the show right now, if you're watching the show, you let me know if Ilhan Omar has committed marriage fraud. Has she concealed any key facts in her application process to become an American citizen? Has she committed treason? Has she committed terrorism or any high crimes? You let me know if you think she has. And so, this is why President Trump's move was so lethal. By tying Omar's Frankenstein cruelty to her immigration past, he managed to quickly shift the debate from should she apologize to should she even be here in the country in the first place. And millions of Americans who never thought about denaturalization suddenly learned the truth. It is real, it is legal, and it could apply. And just when Omar thought this couldn't get any worse, the speculation started spreading. You see, guys, for years there's been whispers about Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and others in that squad being more than just outspoken critics of America. Trump's allies are openly saying it right now. There may be coordination, high-level ties, maybe even RICO cases waiting in the shadows, connections to pro-Hamas sympathizers, Antifa-style street activists, groups that thrive on chaos and violence here at home. So now, whether or not prosecutors ever prove that, the fear alone is devastating, because the question sticks. How deep do her loyalties really go? Americans are already angry at her cruelty toward Kirk's death. Now they're wondering if her politics are more about importing foreign conflicts than serving US citizens. That is a narrative you don't walk away from. And that is why this clash isn't just about one congresswoman. It's symbolic. It's about two competing visions for America. Now, on the one side, Ilhan Omar, multicultural progressivism, global perspectives, constantly criticizing America, pointing to its failures, trying to reimagine national identity through the lens of oppression and grievance. To her supporters, she's the future. To her critics, she is an absolute nightmare. Now, on other side, Donald J. Trump, populist, nationalism, America first, loyalty, patriotism, preserving American exceptionalism. President Trump doesn't apologize for America. He defends it. He doesn't have to apologize for America. And this is why his framing of Omar resonates so deeply, especially with older Americans, right? Folks who lived through the Cold War, folks who remember when loyalty and unity weren't just slogans, they were actually survival. Now this fight isn't just Omar versus Trump. This is a cultural war in real time. And for the first time in years, Omar is losing. She's getting trampled. Now, let's talk about what's happening behind the scenes, because Omar's isolation's becoming undeniable. When AOC or Bernie Sanders gets attacked, their allies circle the wagons. You see statements of support, fundraisers, rallies, but Omar crickets. Did you guys notice that her Democratic colleagues are suddenly quiet? Donors are hesitating. Whispers of a primary challenge are floating around right now. In fact, progressive organizations, they're even looking at replacements. People who could push the same agenda without carrying all her toxic baggage. That's how you know that the walls are closing in. When your own party stops defending you, when they start treating you as a liability instead of an asset, you're on borrowed time. And Omar knows that. And if we know anything about the Democratic Party, it eats its own self. You know what I'm saying? It's a snake eating its own tail. But the final nail in the coffin may have been the Charlie Kirk Memorial. Tens of thousands of people. Estimates from anywhere from 50,000 people to 100,000 people showed up to honor him. President Trump and J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance, they were there front and center, standing shoulder to shoulder with Charlie Kirk's family, making it crystal clear where they stood with decency, with respect with America. And against that backdrop, Omar's Frankenstein comments looked even more grotesque. It got worse. Security had to deal with an armed man impersonating law enforcement near the stadium. Think about that. Families are grieving, leaders are paying respects, and someone shows up with weapons pretending to conduct security sweeps. That's the kind of chaos reckless rhetoric can unleash. And it was Omar's own words that fueled that fire. So, in one weekend, the contrast was undeniable. Trump and Vance honoring America's values, but you had Ilhan Omar ridiculing the dead and sparking fear. America saw it with their own eyes. And so this brings us to the big question. Why does this feel different? Why does this feel like the beginning of the end of Ilhan Omar? Scandals over policies, they come and go. You can survive a bad vote. You can spin a controversial statement about taxes or spending or something like that, right? But scandals about character, about basic human decency, oh, those stick. Those don't go away very easily. And so, what did America see? I think we saw a congresswoman mocking a dead man, dismantling his life's work as trash, doubling down even when his family was grieving. And then when called out, she panicked. She stumbled. She lashed out. That's not strength, that's fear. And voters can smell it. Now, here's a brutal truth. Once the public decides you lack basic judgment, once they see you as someone who celebrates death instead of showing respect, oh, there's no coming back from that. Excuse me. Every opponent from here on out, they're going to bring this up. They're going to, every debate, every ad, every fundraiser, and she knows that. This is why her body language has changed. This is why her voice cracks under pressure. She's realizing this isn't just another bad headline. This could end her career. But the lesson here is even bigger than Ilhan Omar. It is a warning for America's future because our politics are spiraling into a dangerous cycle. I know you guys are seeing it, right? Outrage fuels clicks. Outrage fuels fundraising. And so politicians compete to say the most shocking, the most outrageous thing that they can think of. But where does the road end? Like we saw it at the Kirk Memorial, an armed man impersonating law enforcement at a funeral. That is where reckless rhetoric leads. This is not about free speech, it's about responsible speech. Yes, Omar has the right to say whatever the heck she wants, regardless of how ignorant it might be. But leaders are supposed to know when not to say it. Leaders are supposed to put country above petty point scoring, right? And this is where Donald Trump showed the contrast. By hammering Omar's cruelty while standing with Kirk's family, by reframing the debate around loyalty, decency, and belonging, Trump reminded Americans of something that we've almost forgotten. Leadership is about more than words. It's about values. It's about showing up when it counts. So the real question is, where do we go from here? Do voters punish this kind of reckless behavior, or do they let it slide? Do we demand more from our leaders? Do we keep spiraling into chaos? One thing is clear, Omar finally got scared. Not because of a headline, not because of Twitter, but because the ground beneath her political career is shaking, and this time Trump's response may have changed everything. So, what do you think? Did Trump just end Omar's career with this one move? Should there be real consequences for her words and actions? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below, guys. I want to read your comments. And if you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share this video, because most people still have no idea what's happening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.